everybody. Welcome. It is Monday, 7 o'clock. The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Johnny Torres with you, as always. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And again, don't forget, if you're enjoying the show, make sure you comment. Tell us, give us a little hello there in the comment section. Throw us a like, a share, and make sure to like us on all of our social media platforms. And don't forget, if you happen to miss any of tonight's show, you can catch the audio version of our podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon platforms. Again, we're trying to get the show to everywhere you are, so we certainly appreciate you joining us today. Plenty to talk about, and so we're going to go ahead and run down the topics first before I introduce our special guests here at the table. So we're going to go into the Supreme Court expansion, the very thing that Joe Biden said years ago that he would not do, and is actually now considering it. We'll pick that apart. Cuba, the next chapter, and we have an expert on the topic on tonight's show. We're going to be talking about the Florida Anti-Riot bill that was signed into law today by Governor DeSantis, and certainly some of the more fun theatrical components of what took place today during that event. Anibal's Attic, it's going to be an interesting one, as always. I'm sure it'll knock something off, if not, at the very least, your socks. And we're also going to talk about the transgender sports bill that is also most likely going to be signed into law by Governor DeSantis. We'll pick that apart, and of course, to see if that's one of these other issues that Florida is going to be leading the way as this continues to be an issue across the country, and not only in high school sports, but in professional sports as well. Now, very excited about today's panel and today's topics, because there's, more to talk about than we can absolutely get to in what is supposed to be an hour, but we usually run about 90 minutes anyways. So joining me at today's table, to my left, we're going to start off with my buddy Joe Wicker. What's up, man?
Hey, guys. Good.
He likes the show in stereo. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Glad to be here. I got my knockoff Beats.
There you go. Are they bits?
They're bits.
The bits. All right.
Tweeters.
Yeah. And a very good friend of mine, way overdue in terms of joining us on the show. He's been a bit of a recluse. Would that be the right word lately?
Yeah,
political recluse.
Good
term. Yeah. But certainly an expert in many of today's topics, and so we appreciate you joining us. Retired United States Air Force Colonel E.J. Otero.
Glad to be here. What a fantastic opportunity. Thank
I'm
you
so excited, man. We haven't seen each other in a while, obviously because of COVID and whatnot, but also, you've been taking care of the family and the beautiful family you're building. And
Thank you so much. Trying to be good.
Yeah,
dad.
and they're here. They're, the wife and the son are out playing around, and so we're glad that you were not only able to join us, but bring them along as well. So we appreciate that, as we do try to be a family show.
As best as possible.
As best as possible, that's right. And then, of course, better late than never, and as always, is Anibal, David Cabrera.
Thank you. I feel welcomed for that right there.
I'm kidding. You were actually early on today.
I was early.
So,
very surprised.
Okay.
The wife kicked me out of the house.
We have our
It's
good
fine.
days.
It's fine.
That's right. So again, really, there's so much that we could be talking about today, but we'll go ahead and kick things off with the Supreme Court expansion. This is something that they were threatening, during the Trump campaign, during the presidential campaign. It became an issue because, of course, really, I think historically, I don't know that any president has appointed more judges, not only maybe to the Supreme Court, but certainly to the federal courts across the country than Donald Trump. And so now, after seeing what took place over the last 4 years, Democrats are obviously worried that some of these judges may work against their agenda, and of course, to our sake, hopefully so. How bad is this? Obviously, historically, the size of the court has changed. It's ebbed and flowed, right? But 9 seems to be this great number that we've had for quite some time. How awful would it be for them to go at this point, at this juncture, and to try to change that?
Well, if I can weigh in, there have been changes to the Supreme Court historically, absolutely. Right. But the reasons have never been party-based. They have been representation-based. They have been population-based. They have been a number of reasons, a number of arguments. Since then, there have been several attempts in the past 40, 50 years to discuss it. And even the incumbent president, Joe Biden, said when he was in the Senate, close to 40 years ago, he said that it would be foolish to do such a thing. And the reasoning was not acceptable. And now to say that we're going to do that when it is very clear that it is based on party lines and not on not on a representation and not to improve the working relationships of the other two branches is conflicting.
Right. Well, I mean, again, we've seen that somebody who we thought was going to be more to the conservative side of things, Chief Justice John Roberts, really hasn't been that. You know, he's been very unpredictable, if anything, to kind of put it lightly, and certainly not shy of controversy, but he certainly hasn't been, I think, what a lot of conservatives expected he would be when he was appointed to the Supreme Court, right?
Well, that's what happens when you try to not have try to avoid the controversy of it, right? Because I think Bush picked him. I mean, I'm not saying that the guy wasn't qualified, but my understanding is Bush picked Roberts because he was going to be a non-controversial pick, that he could just get through the Senate and be done and over with.
Sure.
So, well, here you go. The trying to avoid controversy ends up getting you controversy, because now the guy, you don't know where the guy stands on anything.
Well, now it seems like no matter who gets picked, it's going to be controversial.
It's going to be, which you just have to have the fight.
Right.
You have to have the fight, and that's it. And the bottom line is that if there's 51 Republicans in the Senate, you'll get them through if you're a Republican president. And if you're a Democratic president, you're going to need 51 votes in the Senate.
Right, which we kind of saw.
That's all there is to it.
And what may be, you know, with the last appointee, you know, it may be that we're now seeing the future of how this is going to be handled, which is you go up there before the Judiciary Committee and say nothing.
Yeah, well, and most people don't realize that a lot of things that we do now in modern politics is still actually new. Like going before panels like that doesn't even have to happen. That hearing, the whole Senate hearing, is actually for the senators. It's for the politicians to get TV time so that they can make some quote, so that they can then tweet it out or put a 10-second clip on Facebook or whatever it is.
On a mailer.
Because actually there's no constitutional requirement that a judge sit before the Senate committee.
For
the
approval.
The Senate could just go to the floor and vote.
Okay, right.
And that's it. There doesn't have to be a
But
hearing.
we've gotten so accustomed to it right now.
The hearing there's no requirement for a hearing. It's just advice and consent. So all the Senate has to do is receive the name from the president, go do business that day, pass it or refuse it, and that's it. It's done and over. We don't even have to have the spectacle.
Sure.
It pays to the media and it pays for the politicians.
Now, if given the opportunity, Anibal, how far do you think they're going to try to take this? I mean, we've got 9. I mean, at one point, right, do we say, okay, enough's enough? If they actually, is it going to be 12, 13, 14? I mean, what's...
21. 27.
No, I'm thinking an even number so we can have even more of a problem. The Supreme Court has changed six times since the creation in 1790. So it's not unprecedented to see the change or a conversation about expanding the courts. However, it is completely in the murkiness of political desires for it to get done. The Democrats cannot see themselves. No Democratic leaning or progressive leaning Supreme Court justice is going to resign anytime soon because they don't want their seats to go up. And almost all of the conservative ones are are healthy at the moment. And so I don't think anyone's going to want to give up their chair at the current set. And seeing how dangerously close the Senate is of being either flipping one way or the other, I don't think the only way to be able to influence now the third and final branch of the U.S. government would be to try to expand the court. And as the Colonel was saying, that it's always been because of population, location, and it's never been because of political lines. And I don't think the U.S. people want to see that go down the pike. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that as a conversation. I don't think it's going to happen though.
I don't think it's going to happen. My prediction is that it doesn't happen. The Democrats love to use the court system to try to push policy because their ideas are generally unpopular in many ways, and so they have a hard time getting it through state legislatures and getting it through Congress. So they try to use the court system. But my prediction would be that the Democrats talk about this a lot. They raise money off of the issue.
Right.
That they put this commission together, or the panel, or whatever they've got going now, and before you know it, the elections are here. The Democrats lose control of the Senate, which only requires the loss of one seat.
Correct.
Flipping one seat. They lose control of the Senate, and then if you're a Republican, the issue goes away. It's not going to happen. And if you're a Democrat, you can say, you can thankfully say to yourself, oh, well, we tried, but now we don't have control of the Senate. And then you can fundraise off of needing to gain control of the Senate, so you can do what you said you were going to do 2 years ago. Anyway,
it's a great volleyball.
They
It's a
don't
great
really
volleyball.
want. I bet you there's a lot of Democrats that actually don't want to expand the court, but they're not going to say that. They're just going to let this go until the next election, and then when the Democrats lose the Senate, now they have an excuse not to do anything.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
can still fundraise
they
off of
they
it.
obviously got fired up around,
Yeah, they're fired up
all
over
the
it.
appointees, and they
Yeah.
they obviously knew that they were at a
they
disadvantage.
raised money off
because,
that.
Right, exactly. But the truth of the matter is that, I mean, removing kind of our own partisan wishes aside, I mean, they haven't really seemed to rule favorably in one side or the other. I mean, to me,
No,
they've kind of
actually-
achieved the
yeah,
objective,
no,
which is a
yeah.
pretty balanced outcome.
Yeah, actually, the Supreme Court, when you look at, so Roe v. Wade is one of the biggest issues you could take. You take the pro-life issue and go look at who has made decisions that are anti-life. And sadly, what you'll find is a lot of Republican-appointed Supreme Court justices siding, against the issue of life. It's sad.
Isn't
but-
that because they're taking a more constitutional approach?
Well, I mean, I'm not a legal scholar. So
No, I
I don't
know.
get into
I
that,
mean-
but I think the bigger issue is precedent, because not to take over the conversation and turn it into the Roe v. Wade thing, but
Right.
when Roe v. Wade was decided, the presentation to the court was, that, well, it should at least be allowed, in these minimal circumstances, and the justices actually believed that this was not going to become what it is today.
Sure.
They had no idea that it was going to become abortion on demand. And so thinking, well, we don't want to remove...
Well, and that the states
Yeah.
would continue to push the issue.
Yeah, and thinking, well, we don't want to completely ban, the procedure, or whatever. They took that approach and they created this right to it, which it doesn't exist in the Constitution. But since then, I think most people have recognized that, okay, it turned out to be really bad. Abortion turned out to be a lot worse than what the justices at the time thought. But my point is that, to what you said, this idea that the Supreme Court is radically this way, right, or radically left. No, there's some decisions that seem to be pretty, that were groundbreaking or have been very controversial. But the court as a whole and the decisions it's made, I don't think it's been really a win for the left or the right.
No.
And to your point, I mean, that's kind of the point.
Sure, right.
I mean,
Well, the one thing that we can see in the Supreme Court, it is a tripod. If you have an idea, if you have an agenda that you want to push within either party, every party, you have the parties, and there are agendas within the party. These are things that we want to push. Some that are more moderate, some that are more liberal, some that are more conservative within both parties. In the Republican Party, you have mostly conservatives, but you also have them in the Democratic Party, even though it's mostly progressive. So what is going on in the Democratic today that they're pushing hard in the agenda, the social justice issue, and the social justice issue, tied to the Electoral College point, tied to revisiting the Constitution as a living, breathing document as identified by President Obama in his presidency. It wasn't done before, but it has taken a life of its own within the progressive side of the Democratic Party. And to do that, what do you need? You need a court.
Right.
You need a court that is going to uphold that
Yeah.
on a constitutional basis and give it validity. Because once that happens, it becomes very difficult to undo all those things. So it is almost like let's try this message. Anybody does that, whatever message it is. But for the progressive side of the Democratic Party, this is a main message.
Right.
And they will push it. It may not stick now, but they're going to try it again until it sticks.
Well,
then-
and I mean,
and
sorry,
really
just really quick, the scariest thing I think about this topic has just been how amenable Joe Biden has been to even considering it, when he's now saying that no rights are absolute, none of the amendments are absolute when it comes to the Constitution. I mean, that's a pretty frightening thing to say.
It's
Anibal.
going to be frightening, but doing a little bit of history of when people talked about packing the courts, it wasn't, the last real big push was during FDR in 1936, when he won in a landslide. And even then, he wanted to add 6 more justices for every one justice. He wanted to add extra justice for every justice that was over the age of 70. So it was definitely a desire to pack the courts, and he still couldn't get it through. So it's something that no matter what people talk about, it's very difficult to have happen. And because the public sees it as an affront on that final check when it comes to the balance of power. So people just don't like that, to be able to show that they're being manipulative of it just because your side hasn't won the popular vote.
Well, I agree that I don't think it's going to pass. I agree with you, Joe. It's definitely not going to pass this time around, but it's not going away. Unless the progressive side of the country decides that they're not going to pursue it anymore. But they're going to continue trying and trying and trying.
At first, somebody,
As they do with all their issues.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because like EJ was saying, if 5 years ago, even not even that long, someone would have said we should pack the Supreme Court, people would be like, that sounds like cheating, right? Like, I mean, most people would be like, no, that's not a good thing.
Right.
But once they start saying it openly, yeah, no, we need to pack the court. Eventually, it becomes, it's not even surprising anymore. It becomes a policy position.
Yeah.
Well, and if Republicans were to
becomes
be saying that
acceptable.
we needed to pack the Supreme Court,
Oh, they
all of
would-
a sudden it's about white supremacy,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
would
about
be-
putting
yeah.
more white people on the Supreme Court.
Well, the abortion issue had become, it didn't start like that.
Yeah.
And it, back in the 60s and 70s, and it became a policy issue for certain elements of the Democratic Party and some of the Republican Party, small, but definitely there. And if you want to sell yourself as a moderate in the Republican Party, you usually tend to support the right to life, the pro-choice position, and then you're more of a moderate. There's your bona fides. You're more of a moderate. In the Democratic Party, it's like if you're a progressive, but for the most part, that is your card carrying. I am on this side.
Yeah.
But that evolved, but it was not accepted at first, but they never let it go.
Right.
And then it became a precedent in the Supreme Court. And now, when they found after the political system found the Clarence Thomas hearings, the circus that it was, became currency.
Right.
Yeah.
Then everybody has to face
It's political currency. Yeah.
Everybody has to support the Senate. Everybody has to support and view any hearings in the Senate.
Yeah.
So all the senators, like you said, have their 10 minutes, 15 minutes of fame, utilizing and forcing the Supreme Court candidate to have a position in something that they have not heard legally yet. So one of those items is the right to life. Now it is the packing of the court, and then it's going to be later on. What do you think? Well, they already asked the sitting justices in the Supreme Court. What do you think about
But like Johnny
expanding
said,
the court?
now they just don't say anything.
Yeah, well,
Like Johnny said, now they just go sit there and basically they do their best to say nothing because what's the point? And I don't think the politicians actually care. They're just there. They just want to get their.
They're there to make their stump speeches.
They just want to get their stump speech out.
Yeah.
And get their soundbite.
they're empty unless there is a controversial candidate.
But
Then it is full.
But then that also means that, so something I heard a few days ago is that the Supreme Court once again rejected the idea of putting cameras inside the courtroom because they didn't want to become a spectacle.
Sure. Yeah.
Hence why you still have the sketch artists that still go in to take actual sketches of the court hearings. It's because they don't want to become
because
a
I mean, look at
spectacle.
what's happening right now with the Derek Chauvin trial.
Yes.
You would have this day-by-day dissection by the media and the public opinion as to what's happening with that case.
Which means you wouldn't. Which means you couldn't. Well, here's the thing. Think about it. If you want to know what the Supreme Court said, you have to go to the website or to wherever you can get it.
Right.
And you need to get the PDF and you have to read it.
Yeah.
Or you get the transcript or you get the audio.
Right.
But you can't, like you said, the media can't sensationalize an audio clip that could be an hour long. They can't do that. They can't sensationalize it because no one will pay attention. They can't sensationalize a written transcript.
Yeah.
So I'm in agreement. I say keep the cameras out of there. if you want to know what the Supreme Court's doing, read the case. You might learn something.
Well, and again, I think very smartly, a lot of judges in very controversial cases
Why would they want
have
kept the cameras out.
Yeah, kept the cameras out.
Kept
And
the
look, and
cameras
honestly, on this issue and a lot of others, it always makes me smile because whenever something is this difficult to accomplish, especially like packing the court, it just shows you and it reminds you how brilliant the founding fathers were in making things like this incredibly difficult.
And let's not forget, there is the icon in the Supreme Court for progressive, which is Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah.
And she was against it.
Right.
And she is on record.
Yeah, she is.
As of last
not
year.
Once,
Yeah.
Not once,
Recently.
but many
Yeah.
times
Being against it. Yep.
So there are those legal minds within the progressive movement that are gonna argue whether that is a fight that they want to pick up.
Yeah.
If Ruth Bader is going to be used by everybody as a point against packing the court.
And it's fascinating to see the justices talk when they give their lectures or when they go around the country after the cases have ended,
Right.
and able to listen to them. Even though I might not agree on many of the cases, or I do agree, it's fascinating to see someone that has dedicated their life to the law of the country and figuring out a way to actually make sure it's applied equally under the law. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I mean, they had sunshine laws before Florida came out with their version of sunshine laws, not allowing you to talk to each other for cases, not allowed to be able to have interactions in regards to court cases themselves. However, there's still plenty of conversations about how certain justices of the past played in poker games in DC together. We're drinking buddies. We're attending each other's. Like, I think someone went to someone's
It's a lonely
baptism.
club.
It's a very isolating job.
Right.
The
Yeah.
average justice is on the court for 16 years.
Right.
And so it's a fascinating world that they live in, and fascinating to hear them talk out loud.
I admit I don't see how Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Scalia were like
They were
close,
friends.
like close friends. I
They
don't
were
get it.
legit friends.
Maybe I don't really get it. I don't see how that works.
You don't
because-
have any
I mean-
super progressive friends?
No, probably not. I don't know.
We try. We get mad at them for having a bubble.
Well,
we shouldn't have a bubble.
I think I have family members that are that way.
Yeah, but see,
That's
again,
not
the
bubble,
problem is
that's
that you're
blood.
thinking about it. You're thinking about it politically.
I know you
when-
can't at all.
when-
I am thinking of it
when
politically.
if you
Absolutely.
think about it, they in essence are they're all on the same team. They are basically because they're all on the Supreme Court.
I mean,
and nobody else
le-
understands
Right, but
the pressures
They couldn't
and
see the same. Those two read words and they completely derive from it something different.
yeah.
And that's just what's odd to me.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that
you-
they can't,
You have a
you know-
completely different view of the Constitution than
Yeah, but they
someone
may
else.
have other
And that,
interests,
yeah.
other
Yeah, no,
hobbies or
obviously
other.
they did. They were
you know.
like friends or whatever.
Well, they were,
All right.
They were
It was
both into the same music. They were
Yeah,
both into
exactly.
the same type of art.
Yeah, well, again, these are and a
Well,
lot,
they
and
were-
oftentimes,
these are
books.
intellectuals.
right,
who-
exactly.
intellectuals.
A lot of them are
They're-
Ivy League.
Yeah,
you
So-
know.
they're
so
intellectuals.
going to-
Agree to disagree.
Yeah. But going to that point, Hector Gonzalez makes the comment that they were both very deep in academia and saw themselves
Yeah.
as colleagues more than as rivals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
just
Very
goes to
smart.
show, hey, it's just us heathens that get all riled up. It's,
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
we're
whoa,
the
whoa.
ones
Keep
get
that
riled
to
up
yourself.
politically.
Yeah.
I do have progressive friends, I admit that.
Yeah, look, and it's fun because
I guess
again,
I have some.
I have friends who've actively removed anybody who disagrees with their political opinions and that sort of thing. I think to me, it just like I like to understand and have a better understanding of what the other side thinks. Because again, it helps you, either confirm or question your own position
So,
on
I
issues.
have no
But then
problem with
also when it comes to again having conversations like this, you learn why they believe the things that they
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
and it helps you better structure your
Yeah.
argument as to why you believe what.
Well, there's a biblical reference in there, and it's called iron sharpens iron. The only way you're going to get better to be able to talk about your faith and talk about your positions is to talk to someone that probably maybe have opposite views, so then you feel more comfortable defending, and you figure out why you defend the positions you defend, because you have someone that can actually debate that conversation.
I don't mind it. I enjoy it because I don't run from conflict, so I have no problem engaging in that with,
We know.
with friends. But here's the problem. Then when you ask, okay, who's going to pay for that? or how will that work in reality, then they get all upset for some reason and they throw food on the table and Thanksgiving's over with. I mean, all by asking who's going to pay. You ask who's going to pay for it and people get angry. I'm like, what? I'm just asking a question. I'm just asking a question.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Joining us today, Joe Wicker, Colonel E.J. Otero, and Anibal David Cabrera. Again, plenty to talk about. We were just discussing the packing of the Supreme Court. Now, a topic that I know our special guest loves to talk about, and it's certainly something we maybe don't talk about often enough on this program, but we certainly picked the right person to join us, and that is Cuba. Anibal wanted to call it a new day in Cuba, but that's a little too optimistic in my point. I'd say the next chapter. I just call it the next, because I don't have very high expectations about any of that sort of thing.
High hopes.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Yeah, I mean, he was a Castro, right? But people knew that he was slightly more moderate, if you can even say so, than his brother was.
Than Fidel?
Yeah.
Raul was worse than Fidel.
Well, but he didn't really, and again, maybe we weren't paying attention close enough.
He was not as flamboyant
but
as Fidel.
No, of course not. No, didn't love because Fidel was always known, right, for being a great speaker, and I mean, you have to, right, to rise to that level of power. You have to have that charisma and that kind of additional element about you, right. That X factor, right? Now, some people would say like Raul was the brains, of the operation, possibly, and you're saying, he was more radical, but we didn't really see any major changes under his leadership, or did we?
No, we did not.
Oh, okay.
Well, there are folks that will say, yes, there was an opening of Cuba under Raul, and we need to reach out to Cuba.
The visit from Obama.
Let's visit Cuba. Let's open a consulate in Tampa. That was
which is happening again. It's coming. That conversation is happening again.
They would
yeah.
say all those things again, and based on Raul as a person,
right.
as a perception that he was milder than Fidel. He was not.
So that was just spin then? That was just
total
right.
spin.
Okay.
Fidel was a genius. Fidel was the power behind anything Cuba, even today, years after his death. Raul is the most ruthless of them all. Raul and Che Guevara ran the military commissions that order people for firing squads.
Sure, genocides.
Raul was personally involved in shooting people in firing squads. Today, there were people in Cuba that were arrested for no other reason that they did not have a permit for 2 feet by 2 feet wooden stand to fix watch straps for tourists. If you didn't have that permit, you would go to jail for 30, 40, 50 days.
Right.
Under Fidel.
Because you're only allowed to have the business or trade that you're allowed to have.
Under Fidel, about 80% of the people in Cuba either have been in jail, know somebody that was in jail, or know somebody that was going to go to jail. Under Raul, it's over 90%. And they were mild because they would present it, the actions would go on, but then they would present it with a very clean Havana, with Beyonce going in the open cars. And,
they did a huge publicity
and doing
push.
all these
TV shows,
and
publicity,
reaching out,
sure.
and the ambassador
propaganda.
The ambassador coming to Tampa, shaking hands with everybody, going to Ybor City, and all these things, forgetting about the ruthlessness of Raul back in the home country.
Yeah.
Raul did not give up the presidency to Diaz-Canel about 4 or 5 years ago because he was giving up the power. People thought at the time that he did. They said Diaz-Canel, well, the Castros are gone. They said that 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Huh.
They said Diaz-Canel is now the president of Cuba, the Castros are gone. No, Raul remained the chairman of the Communist Party, which is the most powerful institution in Cuba. What he said went. So he was still, in essence, the ruler.
It was kind of like when Putin took a back seat, for a few years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, behind Medvedev.
Sure,
exactly.
right. Yeah.
The same thing. But Raul as an entity does not have the appeal that Fidel has. People still
For the
think,
loyalty, I'm guessing.
Yes, that he doesn't.
Right.
People still think that in Cuba, every day Cubans, they still think of the revolution in terms of Fidel. And Raul was one of the henchmen behind him.
So who's this new guy? What's the
Diaz-Canel, he's been the guy sitting there. He's been saying what he's supposed to be saying properly. He's the guy that people here didn't notice, but when President Obama went to Cuba, he was the first one in a Telemundo interview in New York that said it doesn't matter what Obama does and say in Cuba, the revolution will continue. So that cut the knees from under anything that anybody in the United States would hope would be negotiations of anything. Give us back the terrorists that are hiding in Cuba, let prisoners go. Nothing like that happened.
Yeah.
And it was almost, some people would say, well, it was naive. Some people say, no, they just didn't care. The Obama administration didn't care. They just set the foundation for what we have today, which is bringing back the issue of Cuba. But when you're at a baseball game in Cuba, and 3 rows behind you, behind the President of the United States, Raúl Castro and Diaz-Canel, when you have the President of the United States there, and 3 rows behind you are the leaders of the FARC guerrillas in Cuba, taking selfies with the president behind them like this.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it is
Sure.
embarrassing.
It's an embarrassment. The President of the United States was used by Raúl Castro. Did Obama support that? Did he know? Did he embrace it? I don't know. I'm not the president.
Right.
I'm not President Obama. But the optics that came out of it were horrendous.
I think they
But
look
to
up
the-
to him. I think they look. I think far left Democrats look up to places like Cuba.
They do.
It's absurd.
Well, because they were willing to, at any cost, basically overthrow the government that they disagreed with to push forth their agenda.
Build a society
but-
that they
but
want to
That
build.
that is intellectually very true. But when it comes to the day in, day out citizen here in the United States,
Right.
the day in, day out far left individual that doesn't know that nuance, what they're supporting in Cuba is the idea that Castro was an icon, an image. It's cool to wear the Che Guevara shirt.
Right.
It is a Madison Avenue advertising job. Because how else can you explain that a country like Cuba, that is by all practical measures destitute, that doesn't produce anything? People still think they produce sugar. They
No.
don't. People still think they produce cigars. Cigars ended for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Cohiba closed. Partagas closed. Rey del Mundo closed. All
Yeah.
these great and then they restarted, kind of, sort of, because of tourists wanted that.
Right.
But they're not the same quality as they used to be. So it's an economy that has been shut down. It's an economy that in 1990, when the Soviets decided to leave Cuba, he says, we're done with you. We're not going to subsidize you anymore. So you figure out how you're going to make money. And Cuba says, well, we're going to go into a special period, periodo especial en Cuba, which lasted years, in which everybody had to tighten up their belts, not eat, that we're not eating already, and not really have a life. And it has remained. They just call it something else now.
Right.
And then they always look at the United States to blame on the United States. They're blaming the embargo. They're blaming this. They're blaming that. Yeah, but
Kind of like the 2-week mask mandate.
yeah.
You know,
They
yeah,
said
they
that
just
for
they
years.
just keep moving the field. They just keep moving the goalposts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what it is just, how can I explain it? It's almost psychological, sexy appeal that Cuba has in guerrilla groups and leftist movements in Latin America. You have Nicaragua with the Sandinista movement. You have El Salvador. The FMLN used to be a Castro-supported terrorist group. The president of El Salvador today was a guerrilla guy, and he has become a conservative, pro-capitalist leader who gives his press conference with a huge Jesus Christ behind him. He turned, but Cuba decided to pull their diplomatic relations with El Salvador for a period, and then you have Guatemala.
But what benefit would that have to El Salvador?
None.
Right.
Because you got to be smart, and that's the thing. If you are in love with the power of the presidency of these countries and what it gives you, the sexiness, the same hunger and the same addiction as a drug lord, in which you don't really care what's going on as long as you got everything, well, that's what these people are in these countries. That's what Chavez was in Venezuela, now Maduro, and that's what Petro is in Colombia,
Right.
and that's what Bachelet is in Argentina. They're in love with this idea of power and controlling of the room that a 6'4" Fidel Castro used to bring since the 50s.
Despite the utter destruction in
Totally.
which he's left Cuba.
Well, and
Absolutely.
also what people, the messaging to the people is equality. But I think what we all know, and I think what leftists understand subconsciously or perhaps consciously, what they understand is that when you bring in a type of government like communism or the lighter version, socialism, if you're part of academia, if you're part of the media, if you're part of the political elite, you are going to be just fine. It's going to actually be a wonderful experience. It's just everyone else is going to be broke and destitute. But that's not a problem if you're in the media. Like, why do they care? I mean, the rich are going to be rich, the powerful are going to be powerful, and the common man is going to be less free and broke.
If I may say this about Cuba, one of the main tenets of Castro's in 1951, when he was starting his movement and did what he did, it began in 1952. One of the main tenets of his communism, even though he called himself a pro-democracy capitalist on TV news and so on, and we bought it, the rest of the world bought it, is the 1950s, not much experience with the communist world. But one of the internal tenets of his school, of Castro's school, is we gotta redo the Constitution. There are constitutional assemblies. We gotta have a constitutional assembly. And when we get into power, we're going to eliminate the Cuban Constitution via a constitutional assembly. We're going to do away what has been the tool that had kept people oppressed.
Kind of like how some
That's what he
wanted to do
did.
the Convention of States.
And that's probably the most important thing that he has done,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what all the communist leaders in Latin America do the first time they get elected into office.
Right.
They say, we're going to have a constitutional
It's textbook,
assembly,
yeah.
which means we're going to stay in power forever.
Correct.
Right.
So
They're going to try to do it legally. They're going to take over, but they're going to do it in a way that appears to be legal.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
it sounds nice.
Right.
They own the message.
Right.
And, a clear example of how Cuba has penetrated Latin America effectively and efficiently is when he gets people like Bachelet in Argentina, and he gets people like Chavez and Maduro in Venezuela split the way they're split. Because there's folks that are opposing Maduro
Yeah.
in Venezuela, but they do not understand that he's just a continuation of Chavez.
How much political influence does Cuba actually have in the formation of and success of political parties throughout Latin America and South America?
Complete
A
control.
lot of control.
Complete
A lot of control.
and total control.
A lot of people don't understand that
So
the
that's
way
why
that
South America.
How?
Well,
Is it?
no, it's by providing resources that they have. So a lot. I think you told me about this, that Cuba would send doctors and medical nurses to these
They rent-
locations,
they rent
and
them
they
out.
would rent them out at a
They
cheaper
rent them.
number. So then the money could go back to Cuba. The ways that the Cuban government, the communist Cuban government, has put their tentacles into South America is starting to show fruit. And the fruit that we don't like to see as U.S. as the Americas. And so the U.S. really needs to start to pivot, because I felt Obama, and Hector, you said it also, Obama wanted to have his Nixon goes to China moment with Cuba, but without having an objective really. He just wanted the photo shoot. He wanted the photo op. And when you go there with no objection, with no real desire to do anything, then the communists are going to use you and use you to keep themselves in more and more power.
So a quick question, Ken, given your military background. So when Democrats, especially Obama, I think, Biden's kind of skirted around the idea, but when they talk about shutting down Guantanamo Bay, is that to curry favor with the Cuban government?
The Cuban government has always wanted to shut Guantanamo Bay since day
Right.
one, since 1959. January 1st, 1959, they wanted to shut Guantanamo Bay. The problem was that the agreement that was reached at the time was that it takes both parties to agree to leave. The United States had never wanted to leave. The United States paid $1,000 a year to the Cuban government for the lease of the land. Castro never cashed
Cashed
one of
check.
them. He never
Wow.
cashed one.
Wow.
He says, no, that is our land, and we're going to keep our land, and we have sovereignty of that land. But the agreement said that no, the United States never agreed, so we will remain there. It's never going to go anywhere.
Sure.
Correct.
Unless we decide one day that we don't really want it. Which
But by
would be
we, you
foolish.
mean Congress,
Congress,
right?
yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Which is why Obama wasn't able to do it.
Exactly.
That, and I'm sure once he got into office and realized what a resource it is in terms of fighting terrorism and
Yeah.
keeping certain people off of American soil. I mean, he obviously tried to make that go away.
Absolutely. I mean,
But do you think it's because he realized there wasn't going to be a political win there, or is it because do you think that they got in his ear and say, hey, no, we actually need this location, we actually need this territory, for national security reasons?
I think they got in their ear.
Okay.
The
Because
intelligence community,
Yes.
said,
Yes.
listen, it's not a political issue. No one cares about Cuba. Like,
Right.
we need this base.
Clapper.
And
Sure.
there will
Who's
never
a
be.
military guy.
Okay.
And there will
And-
never be an embassy in Tampa.
Right. If I have
Well, ironically,
If we anyone with brown skin
Right.
has anything to do with it.
Well, coincidentally, I mean, again, for those of you watching, we're actually coming to you live from Ybor City, which again very much founded in Cuban roots and was certainly the American home of the cigar industry for many decades, and we're blocks away from what they call the only free Cuban soil in the world, which is Jose Marti Park. Which again, there's people that had lived here, their entire lives or for years and didn't know that park even existed, even people of Cuban heritage. And so, I mean, again, so are we pretty much expecting more of the same here for Cuba? I mean, is there?
It never goes away. It's
Yeah.
like a bad habit. It keeps coming back.
Yeah.
It depends on what tinge of political manipulation it takes.
Right.
Does it help us making a point? Right now, if I was a betting man in the intelligence community and all the GCCs, all the geographic combatant commands, they're looking at what does it mean with the change in the administration. Are we talking that we're going to have some of the same, because the powerhouses, the apparatchik in Cuba, have been there for 62 years. You have two generations of people in government that need that government to keep their houses, their money, their luxuries.
Yeah.
Are they going to give it up? To what extent are they going to go to not give it up?
Right.
What role does the U.S.
Well, and the people aren't
play
going to
on
fight
that?
back for it. I mean, they've been
The
beaten.
only
They're
thing,
beat down.
I
saw-
think the only thing, I'm sorry.
No.
The only, I think the only thing that may tilt a little bit is if there is an effort in the United States government to get Cuba to give up some of the terrorists that are hiding there and sell them on the idea, you don't lose anything. You don't lose anything by giving up those people. The Black Panther leader that was there left because he couldn't stand Cuba. So that would be the only thing that can show a crack
Right.
in Cuba, that we may be able to put pressure on them and get more out of it.
But what do you think that would change for Cuba itself?
Well, what it will do, it will open up a little bit the economy. Not internal growth with capitalism like
Sure.
they've been trying to sell you for 10 years.
Right.
Like we have 500,000 micro businesses in Cuba.
Yeah,
and
that's
they
not
shut
true.
them. They shut them down 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Right.
The police goes and round them up, but it was a good publicity stunt. But if you give in to some of this currency roles, instead of having 3 currencies, the dollar, the peso, and the chavito, even though they said the peso is now really the only currency that they have, but the black market has another one.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot. It takes a lot. The only gain that we would have right now economically is zero.
Yeah.
They would have some.
Yeah.
But what is their currency?
For us, it'd be more of a national security win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is their currency? What do we want? Get out of Latin America, leave Venezuela, leave Colombia, leave Argentina, leave all these countries, and we can work. And show us that you're going to give up some of these terrorists that are hiding in Cuba. Show us that you have good faith, not for the United States, but for the a world at large.
But don't you think,
But they're not gonna do
don't
that.
you
I don't think
don't
they
you
will.
think Cuba is kind of like playing like the mafia in this sense?
Absolutely.
Where they're getting
It is a
they're,
mafia.
they're getting
It is a mafia.
residuals from all these organizations they've built in Latin America, and that money and those resources are being funneled back to
My
Cuba.
reasoning for not wanting to see Cuba relations different, as long as it's communist, is because of what's happened in places like Vietnam and China. I mean, these are communist countries that we end up basically just throwing our hands up and saying, okay, fine, if we can't beat you, we'll join you economically. We'll do business with you. And then they become rich countries. And rich communist countries start buying a lot more weapons. And when they accumulate more weapons, they become to get more aggressive. And look what's happening in the China Sea there with the Chinese, and they're buying more and more ships, more and more military hardware, and they're expanding. And if they can't take over an island, they'll just build an island. I mean, so they're already starting to behave aggressively to their neighbors, and that's because their economy has been so developed, and it's basically been developed off the American consumer.
You know-
So I don't want to see Cuba become a wealthy communist country.
No,
That's not going to
nobody does.
That's not going to benefit.
Nobody does. Nobody does. Nobody wants that to happen. We got to understand that when it came to China and Vietnam, we lost the war, and we were obligated at the table to give concessions for economic growth. So we were
Well,
told
I don't think
to
we
do
were
it.
obligated to do anything.
We were told to do it
By
in
who?
Paris
By who?
by them.
Okay, who tells us? Okay.
By them.
all right,
And
what
we
else?
The
signed
UN
it.
probably.
Kissinger,
Okay.
Kissinger signed it. He
Kissinger
said,
signed
okay,
it, yeah.
here we are.
Okay.
We're going to do all this. And when it comes to China, in 1976, they started the discussions on most favored nation status.
Yep.
Yeah.
We gave it away.
Yeah.
We gave them the most favored nation status without asking for anything in return.
And now they just steal from us all day long.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
mean, we're
but
such
the-
we're fools.
Cuba,
the way we do this.
Cuba cannot remain a communist country. But you have to make the assessment now on how to eliminate that.
Right.
Is it the economic means? I don't believe that. I don't think it is. But it is part of a strategic 5-year plan. What are the courses of action to get Cuba to get back in the fold of the countries, of the free countries in the world? Get out of Venezuela, get out of your influence in the leftist movements in Colombia, Petro, for example, because Colombia is an ally of the United States. So it is in our interest for them to go away from there.
Yeah.
Get out of Argentina and Bachelet, get out of Nicaragua, and pretty much give up the pressure that they have on all these countries, which have enormous economic powers in Latin America. And we need to pay attention to Brazil, because if Bolsonaro goes away, and he's our friend, and you have another communist coming over, like Rousseff was, we got a problem. So
Right.
how do we put our chips together to get Cuba to stay out of that picture so we can block them? That's a challenge
Yeah.
that we have not been able to do for 62 years.
But your first comment that you made in that sentence answers the question. We need a 5-year plan, and Americans only think in 4-year terms.
Yeah, we
So
can.
that right there is the
And Wall
biggest
Street
issue
thinks
that
in
we're
3
ever going to
months
have.
terms.
We
And
think-
Wall
yeah.
Street thinks 3 months ahead. That's
Now,
think,
we
we
could-
think in political
I know,
snippets.
and we can think more. I mean, I remember when I saw a protest in Cuba, in Havana, and I was this was a few months ago, I think, and it was very surprising when I saw, I haven't seen a protest in Havana since I have been alive. So that was something, and it actually made the news. I was very surprised on that. So I would see some
You've
chips.
seen the women in white.
Yeah,
you know,
and I've seen some chips in that start to break a little bit. I think if anything, you attack the communist group as a whole. I mean, we did make a comment that China and Vietnam are friends, which they are not. They fought a war in 1970, and they've been pushing
still hate each other.
and they still hate each other, even though they're a part of the
I
communist
didn't say
country.
they're friends. I just said they're both communist countries
Yeah,
that
but
we built their economies.
However, it's an easy way to put a wedge in that situation where you're able to start isolating communist countries where they're at. I mean, we're already doing that with China, with us signing pacts with Japan, Taiwan, and Australia. So there's ways to do that, but I think, again, a lot of our political leaders do not think in 5, 10-year terms. This is it's lasted 60 years.
Right.
It could last another 60 years.
Yeah.
And that's because our leaders do not have an idea of what needs to happen.
All right. On that note, again, thank you everybody for watching. This is the Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. That was a very
That was
healthy.
deeper. Than
That was
So,
really
yeah, I
deep.
loved it. Thank you to Travis Horn. We are coming to you live from the Bullhorn Communications bunker in Ybor City, Florida. Speaking of Cuba again, and it's great to see J.C. Newman Cigars. Continues to be one of the last standing cigar factories here in town. Actually, just renovated their factory, and to see now we got the Cathedral, cigar shop, which is doing amazing things. People are really excited about that. So still very much a part. You can't walk through Ybor City, and even still some parts of Tampa without seeing the Cuban influence here in town. And so it's unfortunate. And who knows? I mean. We always say we'd hope that in our lifetime that we get to see a free Cuba, and there's still that hope, and I think that still drives a lot of people. But it is frightening, and I meant to go on to the next topic, but I did want to touch on the fact that I think 2 weeks ago there was a demonstration by pro-Castro communists here in Tampa, saying that we need to reopen conversations and trade with Cuba. I mean,
they were marching last year.
Right.
Downtown with communist flags.
Right.
And the pictures of Stalin and Che Guevara,
Did that make the news?
How do they reason?
Did that make the news? I was going to say,
This
There was an
sh-
article.
This little
they
stunt
were
2 weeks
two
ago did.
communists,
There was
so
an
they were
article.
two communists.
They are present here.
Yeah.
They did it a year ago. They did it 2 weeks ago. They're there.
But is that an operation, or is that, again, to provide some validity or to provide some support, or or how do they reason being here and still being in support of what's happening over there?
Because you have to be here to bring it down.
I
They
mean,
cannot
that's a
bring it down from
psyops
being there.
operation. I mean, they're
You're
here
right.
doing psyops.
You're
Those
right.
are agents of Cuba.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So their
Absolutely.
the front line was that it's the people, not the politics, driving Ybor City rally to reopen relations with Cuba, and that's just that's completely BS. We know they're
Right.
agents from Cuba in the United States that are purposely trying to rally up this kind of non-genuine reaction.
Let me wrap this up with this comment. The FBI, they put out a report in which they say what are the methods for Cuba to penetrate the United States. Dan Clapper, the DNI under Obama, despite all this outreach to Cuba, Clapper, he put a report in which he says the 4 major human intelligence, counterintelligence threat to the United States are Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba.
Yeah, of course.
Wow.
It was reported. And the FBI followed up with a report. He said, this is what Cuba does when they are in the United States. They will identify individuals in the country to invite to Cuba and show them how wonderful is Cuba.
Right,
And then they would try to establish themselves in a location that people don't see as critical, but it is to them. Now, taking a step back from that, if you open a consulate here in Tampa,
Which is not happening.
when you have had espionage history with Cuba that dates back to the 1990s, people were in jail for killing Americans. MacDill was one of the bases that were under surveillance. They had people in Orlando, the WASP network, that were scattered all over Florida. And people were, spies were in jail for that. Wanting to open up a consular office in Tampa from a communist country, who we know that any communist countries, the embassies and the consulates are nest of spies.
I was going to say, this
With-
becomes a safe house. That
With,
becomes a
no,
safe
no, no.
house.
Doing that with MacDill
Down the street.
Yeah, just
with
becomes a
United
safe house.
States Central Command,
Yeah, yeah.
which is fighting a war in the Middle East,
Yeah.
and United States Special Operations Command. It's like it's like a baby in a candy store
Right.
for the Cubans.
Yeah.
Any idea of supporting a Cuban consulate in Tampa is nonsense.
Nope.
To say that they're going to open up an embassy in Orlando, that's their business.
Pete.
Here, absolutely not.
No aquí.
Yeah, because those agents are trying to infiltrate MacDill
Absolutely.
through
Yeah.
That's the only
relationships
reason
and
they
things
would
that.
do
Well,
it.
they could just sit outside they could just, you're within range of electronic surveillance devices. I
Sure.
mean, they could just.
Why is there a 1962 Ford sitting outside the
You
McDonald's?
go. Well, and then everybody has this like
this really long lens.
really attractive Cuban chick who works for Domino's, and she's delivering pizza on Friday nights to the barracks. I mean,
Yeah.
gathering intel. I mean, come on.
I'm not touching that scenario anywhere.
my gosh. All right,
just
thank
saying,
you.
let them try to put an embassy or a consulate in Tampa from Cuba. Let's see how that's going to work out real quick.
So again, thank you for
burn,
watching the
that's
yard
what's gonna
sign. Are you done?
No, I'm
I'm
not.
done.
I am.
I am, yeah.
All right. Thank you again for watching the yard sign. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast on over at our tech overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. I know I run through those pretty quick, but it's Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. If you want to catch the audio version of our podcast, and again for the video version, Facebook and YouTube. Thanks to everybody who's hanging out, watching the show, and even in the comments. Hector's been killing it in the
Blowing
comment
it up.
section today. My goodness, kind of playing like the 11th man there, helping us out in the comment section. But want to move on really quickly to touch on the Florida riot bill, which again I think. I don't think anybody truly had the expectation that we weren't going to see more of this type of activity flourish, especially given that, we knew some of these cases would be coming down the pipe. But the state legislature has signed off on additional measures, to hopefully prevent, if not at the very least penalize, those individuals who decide to riot in the state of Florida. You were telling me, Anibal, that was quite an entertaining announcement.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was about 35 minutes long. The announcement was talking about how, and the signing ceremony showed it. However, our sheriff from Polk County was our favorite person once again, with his own pictures and examples of what a protest is and what an actual riot is.
Did he do that? Did he do that
Yeah.
at the? Oh,
He did it, and
so he did it at the.
So
He took over the governor's bill signing and
took
turned
over.
it turned it into one of his.
It was beautiful. And then he shows a picture of like what Floridians look like and what Floridians want to do. And I'm like, did he get permission from Disney to put that Disney picture
Oh
in
my
there?
God.
I was like, someone's gonna get sued for that one.
Yeah.
But it was phenomenal. And then the governor was like, oh, it's not a press conference if he doesn't bring pictures to show it. So I was
It's not
like,
a Grady Judd press conference
Exactly.
without some
the chair was giving props to the
Visuals,
governor
yeah.
and had the visuals and everything else. So I thought it was well done, and it was short and sweet. But they were showing the examples of, we're not talking about people that are protesting.
Right.
We are talking about people that are rioting, that are setting fires, and
Sure.
like all this other stuff. And I think that was the and he did a great job communicating the difference.
Well, again, it's to eliminate the spin.
Yes.
Right? Because the spin from the left was, oh, this is encroaching on the First Amendment. And look, there's probably going to be lawsuits coming from this anyways. ACLU is probably going to step in, and a lot of these other organizations are going to try to make the claim that this is somehow against the First Amendment, when again, really, this is about protecting, in most cases, the very communities where some of these protesters come from,
Yes.
because they have the tendency to riot and destroy and burn down the businesses and homes in their own community.
But a lot of the measures, and let me just first state that a lot of the measures that they talked about, at least the only part I saw was the governor, the Speaker of the House, Chris Sprowse, and the Senate President. I saw their comments, and then I had to get back to work. But the things that they highlighted were, if you are arrested for rioting, once it's declared a riot,
Yeah.
which is a difference between obviously you have the right to peaceably assemble. But once it's been declared a riot and you get arrested, they're now changing the law where you can't just be released.
Correct.
The same night, because people are
Right.
going back to prison. Okay, that's just
thanks to state attorneys like our very own Andrew Warren.
But that's just changing the law, sentencing and or it's not really sentencing, but just changing the law when it comes to the policing and the arrest and the detention or whatever. That I don't see where that's going to be unconstitutional, because you're not keeping somebody forever. You're literally keeping them to the morning.
Sure.
Which is kind of normal,
Right.
Only when you have radical state's attorneys and whatnot and prosecutors do you end up releasing people to go back to the riot the same night, booking
Yeah.
people and then letting them go. That's stupid.
Well,
and then the other thing was some liability protections for businesses and things like that. And then the locales that are talking about defunding police, the state basically saying, hey, if you choose to defund policing in your community, then that's going to have consequences for other state funds. I mean, there's nothing about that that's like unconstitutional.
Right. Well, because
So
again, they're quite literally putting the rest of the state at risk.
Yeah. The piece that I didn't hear, maybe somebody else did, was I thought one of the big elements too was changing the statute in regards to a motorist hitting a protester, that they were going to sort of clarify the liability that a motorist would have, and basically saying, if there's a protest going on, you're in your vehicle, you can flee, and if you hit somebody, oh well.
Yeah.
Like
that was the other part.
Is that the part of it?
That was the other part that some people were upset about, but it needed to get clear.
Yeah, because you had just regular people that were like, what happens? Like, what happens to me? Do I allow myself to get assaulted? Like,
right.
At what point
or
am
have
I
your vehicle
allowed?
destroyed?
Yeah, because what the common man understands is, the common man understands right and wrong, right, in our society. What they don't understand is, okay, at what point am I able to use, deadly force to defend myself? And that's where people
even
start getting
fleeing
worried.
is a form of self-defense.
And fleeing is self-defense, but when you're fleeing in a car and you hurt somebody, your regular person doesn't want to hurt somebody.
Correct.
But then you're conflicted, and the problem is that by the citizen being conflicted with the decision-making process, very quickly things go bad, and they go bad super fast, and next thing you know, you're swarmed. And now that you're swarmed, now you have a choice. Either you're going to sit there and hope for the best, and we've already seen people get dragged out of their vehicles and killed, or you're going to drive your automobile over another human being. And are you going to be cleared? And I think a lot of people were like, I don't want to go to jail.
Well, that's where these laws were necessary to be fixed up, because you need the police to know that if someone is blocking the street illegally, then that needs to be taken care of before a motorist has to make that decision of fight or flight. And that's a very scary scenario, because again, if my wife is in the car, we're hitting someone. If you have kids in the car, you're hitting someone.
But the protesters were taking your goodwill or my goodwill. They're taking advantage of your average person just trying to travel unobstructed. They take advantage of that person's morality, knowing you're not going to run over me. So, which turns in from marching down a road in protest to blocking a road to rioting and surrounding automobiles, and eventually, violence.
Well, and again, if you want to protest down a particular street, you need a special permit for that.
Yeah.
You don't. I don't think even again, you have the right to protest, but you have to stay on the sidewalks or you have to be in a public space. But I don't think you're allowed to protest on the street. And like we saw here in Tampa and in a lot of places around the country, they were starting to intentionally block on-ramps and off-ramps from interstates and highways.
Yeah.
And again, that itself was putting the public in danger.
And then I think it was AOC and some other Democrats were making saying that, protests are supposed to be uncomfortable.
Maxine Waters.
Okay. Well, saying that it's supposed to be uncomfortable, that protests, I got that. I get that. If you want to protest an issue politically, you're going to put pressure on the government. You're going to put pressure on society to change. I think that's very American. The problem becomes when you are now stopping me from my freedom of movement.
Correct.
Okay, I haven't committed a crime. You can't detain me.
Right.
So if I'm trying to travel freely as a free man and you're detaining me unlawfully, okay, now you've violated my rights, and your rights are no greater than my rights, and now we have a problem. And so hopefully this law will put some common sense into some local, police forces and local DA's offices.
So Hector says in the comment section, the riot bill makes sense. It promotes the fact that Florida is safe for visiting. Does anybody want to visit any major city in the United States, given the fact that they have a chance of there being a riot at any time because of what's going on? I think that's a great example.
Who wants to go to Minneapolis right now or go to Portland right now?
And that's the irony of all this. The people that are claiming to want to support either black-owned businesses or just the rights of minorities in general are destroying the cities that house black-owned or minority-owned businesses, and they're going to destroy their own livelihoods. It's crazy,
Yeah.
and people have a right to earn a living. And I understand protesting, but no, you can't. They're destroying these cities. And if these Democrat-led cities want to destroy themselves, then hey, you know, I mean, that's
Well, let
all
them
on
put
you,
the
that's
bill.
on you,
Like,
but
well, let
that's
them
on
put the
you,
bill
but-
and don't come to the federal government for financial assistance.
Well, one of the last things that the sheriff said was actually, don't come to Florida and start voting the way, and don't register to vote and vote the way you voted up north.
Right.
Vote the way the people are voting here in the state, because people don't want Florida turn into one of the northern or east or the west coast cities. It becomes a huge problem,
Yeah.
and you're seeing the influx.
Right.
We're getting almost 1,000 people a day into Florida, and it's going to become a problem. But
That's a cute soundbite.
yeah, it is a cute soundbite.
All right. Thank you again for watching The Yard Sign. Now it's time for everybody's favorite segment. That is Anibal's Attic. Tread carefully.
I will do my very best. So today in the episode of As the World Burns, we had plenty of material. This past weekend, we saw the passing of the UK Prince Philip at 99, and the very sad moment when you saw Her Majesty sitting. I'm gonna get a little verklempt at the moment, but seeing Her Majesty sit by herself at the funeral, I thought it was very sad when that happened, and was very much a tearjerker. Bombs literally falling over Baghdad as 5 were wounded at a base where American contractors were sitting at, and increased tensions in the Taiwanese Strait as high-level U.S. diplomats arrived in Taipei for the so we could see what happens when the Chinese ambassador looks like his head explodes when he's reading the Riot Act. This week, though, in White People Problems, and Jeffrey,
Oh.
I know.
We have a segment dedicated to me.
Well, oh my gosh, you are the only white people person on this.
Is
on
that
this
right?
box.
You said it, not me.
Anyways, in this week in White People Problem and Jeffrey, which is a friend of ours of the show, cryptocurrency has a remarkable climb in the last few months, with Bitcoin almost doubling since it started this year. However, this past weekend, we saw a 15 to 20% slide in the value of a crypto coin. I'm using this very loosely because I don't believe cryptocurrency is a value
Does it
to
start
begin
with a
with.
B? Does it start with a B?
Anyways, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Well, to spell some of the tea, what happened, the reason why there was a breakdown in the valuation of almost all of the 18 or 32 different cryptocurrencies, there was a blackout in a region of China, which mines the majority of Bitcoin. The Turkish bank, the Turkish National Bank, said that their country will no longer be allowing
wait, but this
individuals
is-
to do mining in Turkey. And there was a rumor
Expand
that the
Turkey.
U.S. Treasury was going to file a case against Bitcoin and other large cryptocurrencies.
But this is what I don't understand.
Because of the money laundering that's occurring. And if anyone really knows what comes to money laundering, it wouldn't be the Treasury, it would be the Department of Justice. What is one of your questions?
But what is it? How do you mine a digital currency?
So you get the
This is what I don't.
This requires Crypto 101 class, which there probably is a class. Is there?
But
like
again,
a,
there
it's-
are
probably- there
classes.
probably
There are
is a crypto
classes.
class.
So
No,
let
I'm
me-
sure there are.
let
But
me
what I don't
finish
understand is
my
how do you mine for
points.
how do you mine for something that
Let
doesn't
me
exist?
finish my point. The flash crash caused over 1 million positions to be wiped out in over a weekend, equaling almost $10 billion lost in 1 weekend alone. Dogecoin, the coin that was created a few years ago as a meme, has actually increased, bucking the trend of any other cryptocurrency around the world, taking a lot of the pressure coming from there, increasing almost 200% in 24 hours with a market cap of $52 billion. A coin that was a meme is valued more than the NASDAQ right
But
now.
this is people just playing around with
Oh,
money.
I completely agree. This is speculation 101.
There's no value there.
No, there's not. It's not
start our
considered
own
an asset
coin right now.
We
That's
could.
right, yeah.
We could easily start up our own.
Well, I mean,
coin.
they're talking about didn't
Yard
you
coin.
say like in the last show that the Chinese government was talking about starting a
So
cryptocurrency?
Starting its own?
so now a lot of governments are trying to figure out how to do their version of a cryptocurrency, which is just digital currency. Like you
Right.
have the ability to have digital currency with your bank account. You don't ever have to take out a dollar; it just transfers. So I totally see this as a made-up market. Now, the background of what cryptocurrency is the blockchain. I think the blockchain technology is completely very valuable. It will change the way the world works
There's a
in
lot
the
of
future,
investment in that.
and a lot of investment in that. However, the allocation of asset valuation for these coins makes absolutely no sense. And I know that some of our friends are watching right now, Jeffrey, is invested in this stuff, and you do you, boo-boo. You can do all you want, but I hope that you get out before it crashes, because just like what happened in Amsterdam during the 1600s, when a flower was the a tulip was the valuation of a house, eventually things will fall.
Yeah.
Well, but and again,
anymore.
like,
No.
well, and the problem is that they're all riding this, right? Like to the moon, right?
To the moon.
Like that's the big saying that they all. But again, it's kind of like with the GameStop stock. It's like at some point you got to jump ship and cut your losses.
Yeah, a lot of people
or
made money.
or
with-
make money.
a lot of people made money with GameStop, but a lot of people lost a lot
But
of
at
money
least
also.
that's an actual company, with tangible,
With assets.
with tangible assets. I mean, this is literally a meme.
Yes. It is now the Dogecoin is valued more.
The
craziness of it all.
picture
Yeah.
is a
It's a dog. It's a meme.
Oh
It's an
gosh,
Asian.
what
It's
is
the Asian dog. It's,
what is that little dog? Isn't it that dog with the real short legs?
Pomeranian?
No,
might be.
no, it's not no.
Corgi?
No, it's not a corgi. It's an Asian
it's not a
dog.
corgi? Okay.
I think it's an Asian. It's an Asian breed. Anyways.
Okay.
Well,
All
we
right.
follow
While
really
while
close.
Anibal looks it up, or Hector gets it to us in the comment section, we'll move on to
This dog.
Yeah,
I know,
exactly.
it's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Samoyed.
So again, eventually we will see what happens. I do feel that cryptocurrency will be here to stay. I just cannot see how one coin be valued more than $60,000. It just doesn't make any sense.
Blockchain should be the technology used for voting.
Yes.
I do not
That's
believe in
because-
I don't believe in federalizing local elections.
No, but if you use blockchain technology
still
for
implemented
voting,
at the state level.
it's impossible then to have fraud. Every single transaction in the blockchain is verified and can be verified by anybody at any time.
Right.
And I know we're not here to talk about blockchain technology, but big companies, I saw recently, JP Morgan, the credit card companies are investing in blockchain because blockchain is going to be the future of verifying, transactions.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to lose their job because of blockchain.
Verifying transactions. And I think the credit card companies, for those that are listening and aren't sure about crypto, part of the push for cryptocurrency is to be able to move money when you buy something and avoid credit card fees. I mean, think about 3% of just about everything that's bought and sold is the fee that you're paying to these companies for you to be able to take your own money and give it to someone else. And we've been doing this for decades now, paying these people. Why? And part of this is a way to get out of that.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I think there needs to be a split between the coin
there's
itself.
a future for
because you're
crypto.
never going to be able to really be able to buy shoes with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That ship is gone.
Well, the question is, when are the 18 or 30 cryptocurrencies, when are they going to begin merging, collapsing, going away, and becoming something that you can actually use?
They can't merge because every individual.
Okay, fair enough.
Every
you really
individual
couldn't.
one is creating
Yeah,
its own
that's right.
version
That's right.
of
So
a
you couldn't
coin
merge it.
that's
right.
being mined
That's right.
in some
No, you're
back
right.
alley China
No,
den.
you're right. So,
Opium den.
But to your point, and I'm not an investment guy, so I'm not like pro or against it per se. I just, like I've told a lot of people, I struggle to understand it because it's kind of like people get all excited about buying gold. And I'm like, okay, that's fine that you're buying gold as a hedge against inflation, but you can't go anywhere and buy anything with gold. So until you can trade it for something, it's not a real currency.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, the reason why you buy or something to hedge against the US dollar is if you think the dollar is going to collapse or whatever. If the US dollar collapses, that means the world has collapsed, which means odds are you won't even have power to your house.
Kimberly says, can I have a Kimmy currency?
Yes,
Sure. Why not?
do you, girl.
right.
Put your face on a little thing and just
I love
bam.
it. I think that's a great idea.
Bam.
I think that's awesome.
Get
Oh
you,
my
like
God.
outsource a IT guy somewhere to create you a little thing and bam.
Well,
There you
not
go.
only is EJ lost, but I think we've also about lost half our audience.
Hey.
Talking crypto.
It was supposed to,
You lost me at not lost me actually. I was just blown away that a meme
Right. Yeah.
drove anything.
A little caricature, a little.
Anything.
Yeah.
It's valued at $52 billion.
That's the world we live
Based
in.
on who? Based on what?
I can
Best on.
I can literally check out
We're
today.
just going to the moon, Johnny.
Go to
Why are you
heaven.
trying to kill it? Why are you killing the vibe?
I'm trying to lose people money.
We're all going to the moon, and you're trying to kill the vibe.
Well, if
I love
anybody
it. I think
deserves
it's
to make a
awesome.
buck, it's Jeffrey.
It is
so.
Jeffrey. I
All
love
right,
it.
we love you, Jeffrey, and again, thanks everybody for watching. Our final topic, yeah, we're definitely going to hit 90 tonight. Is a transgender sports bill that is also looking like it's going to get approved in the Florida legislature, and again, as often happens, I'm sure we're kind of leading the way for future states to follow suit. I doubt the federal government will be addressing this for the foreseeable future, given the controversy of it. But essentially, this is banning, and I don't think it extends to professional private organizations, but certainly mostly addressing at the high school level, which is under the state's jurisdiction, the prohibition of transgender boys or males to compete in women's sports. And I mean, I'm the father of a girl, as are you. I mean, you have a young boy as a child, and it's one of these things where it's one of these things where I think Florida's ahead of the curve, and they're addressing that. Look, this is a very real problem, especially in a state like Florida, where really so much of our entertainment, economy, is sports centric. We produce a lot of globally respected athletes. And then, again, I was saying this earlier off air, my favorite and strongest point when it comes to this issue, which isn't covered under this legislation, but is in mixed martial arts. I mean, currently you have a man who is competing against women and causing irreparable damage to them because, again, the physicality, the biology of a man beating on a woman is just too much for them to bear. And yet they're allowing it. And to my knowledge, I'm not sure if this person's still fighting or not. But we see, especially as we get closer and closer to the party of science telling us, to follow the science, except when it comes to genders and all that other stuff, that this is going to be an issue that states and professional organizations are going to have to take sides on.
I can't believe we even have to pass laws around this. It's just foolishness.
I am very surprised.
Allowing
Well, the Olympic at some point the Olympics is going to have to address this.
To allow a male to compete in a against females is anti-woman.
Sure.
It's anti-woman. And this foolishness, I don't care how you feel about yourself or how you think you are, how you see yourself in the mirror, how you feel. Boys should compete against boys, girls should compete against girls.
Right.
There's a very obvious reason why we have girls sports versus boys sports, and that's that. I don't even know why we have to discuss this. It's foolishness.
And we have co-ed sports out there.
Sure,
There are teams that are co-ed and
Yeah.
everything else.
Because they've agreed to be co-ed.
Yes.
Everybody's
There's a
agreeing to
league.
that.
There's a league that was created.
Yeah,
and everything
sure,
else.
sure.
I will say
But the
this,
rules are technically
but I
modified
will-
to
Yeah,
level the
yes,
playing field.
absolutely.
But I will
Right.
say this just means that men can do better things than women can, honestly. That's what's going on.
Oh my God.
I don't agree with that statement, audience members that are looking at me dirty right now. But I think that's the biggest, when you have a conversation like this with someone and they're trying to argue the point against it, I'm like, you're saying that men can do better than women. Because
Right.
you don't see it on the reverse. You don't have women competing in men's sports and not to say beating the men in their sports, but you don't really have it on the opposite side. You have
Yeah.
kickers that are women and sometimes, and that
No, but
becomes
you
a
have-
spectacle.
look,
But
and
you don't have that in NFL or any of the other major sports.
Well, it is well documented. I mean, Billie Jean King, who famously beat a man at tennis, okay?
He was 59 years old.
Yeah. I mean, it was really, and the tennis player she beat, he was basically he was well past his prime.
prime.
He was practically retired already.
Right.
And
A smoker
she,
and an alcoholic.
yeah, and she has also basically come out and said that this is unacceptable in sport. And Serena Williams, who is I mean, almost inarguably the best tennis player that has ever lived, okay, has even come out and said that she could not beat the best male tennis player,
Yeah.
you know, or even maybe they've done the math, you know. I'm
100
talking,
in the world.
yeah, the top 100 men, you know, playing tennis
but what
in
they
the
all-
world.
And if anything,
that's self-admitted.
One of the biggest leaders in the LGBT community, it's Martina Navratilova.
Right.
She openly spoke against this. She
Yeah,
said
and they've
this
tried
is-
to cancel her
this is
because of
Because
it.
it's
nonsense.
common sense.
Yeah.
Because it's common sense. And
Right.
and what you'll see, the party of science, you know, what you'll see them do is hold up they'll use anecdotal evidence other than like real evidence. So they'll say, oh yeah, well Billie Jean King beat,
Right.
you know, they'll use this extreme example of a woman who's at the peak performance level against, you know, another male, and they'll use that as an example when on the whole, just as a whole, statistically, when you look at the entire group of athletes, you're confronted with the fact, not the feeling. You're confronted with the fact that when it comes to a sport like, say, women's cross country or women's track events and things like that, you're confronted with the fact that you have men, young men, some of them, who on the male team couldn't even
even
qualify.
make it, yep.
Like they can't even make it into
Yep.
any competition. They're dead last. And they switch over to the female sport and they win gold. I'm
Yep.
sorry, but that is offensive to the women that put everything they had into that sport. It's wrong, and it's just it's anti-science, it's
Yeah.
anti-woman, and it's foolishness.
But
Well-
not when it comes to the LGBT community. And I don't even think it's
But
that
they're
community.
making
I think
excuses
it's the
for it.
excuses that they want to say you feel this way, so we should make accommodations.
Well,
for
and they're
you.
even
And then
saying
the
that if
AC
you-
and what the NCAA is going to be the biggest problem, because now there's, and Kimberly, thank you for pointing this out, that we accept all college athletes regardless of how they identify. I don't care how you identify. I care how you were. What are your chromosomes? Is it XX or
Yeah.
XY?
But
That's all that really
let's
matters.
Let's take this to the logical conclusion. There are going to be people who, and yes, the LGBT community, whatever, they're going to come out and say, well, that's not real. They're playing the system. Okay, there's going to be people that are going to play by the rules. There's going to be men who don't make it at their sport. And they're going to be like, you know what? It's time to go to the female side of things.
Right.
And they're going to go dominate, and then you're going to have to, and everyone, and this is what's crazy to me. They're going to stand on the stage and raise their hand with a gold medal in excitement with two women that are actually better, you know, at their sport. And everyone's just going to sit back in the stands like
Yeah.
this is normal.
I don't think,
Their
I don't
first
think-
place-
You know,
there's going to be a breaking
The,
point.
LG,
It will be a break point.
LGBT is split on this.
Right.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. They
They
really
are,
are.
you know,
Yeah.
Well, because a man for a man to basically modify himself, and even still, it's been unsuccessfully. They have to go under severe hormone therapy.
Yeah.
And still, they will still outperform women
Yeah.
physiologically, biologically, even after years of hormone
Yeah.
therapy. But they're claiming,
Yeah.
and this is the loophole that they're trying to say, that after a certain number of years
Yeah.
of hormone therapy, that they should be eligible to compete against women.
Almost like saying, if I take this drug long enough, I'll be as weak as someone else. I will no longer
Right.
have the strength of a
Right,
man.
right.
I'll be weakened to a level that should make me acceptable as a woman competing.
Why
I mean,
do
this is
liberals hate
crazy.
women?
This-
Liberals
it's crazy.
hate women.
It's crazy.
Because they're not willing to allow this actual competition. You're just going to have men in first and second. Eventually, they're going to take the whole platform. But you're going to have these women that are 6'2", an extra 200 pounds on these women. That game of handball, and I think
Yeah,
in the
you
UK.
seen that dude that plays handball?
And I'm like,
He
that
just
is
towers.
a man.
It's just it's like it's a joke. Honestly,
It feels like a
it's-
joke.
It's like a joke is being played on society. You have like the 6'4" guys, like 230 pounds,
And everyone's like, really?
and he just dominates these women. You're like, what are we doing?
So you
Like,
grow out your hair, and that makes
Like,
that
that's-
automatically
yeah.
shows it.
If I
Yeah.
was a father of a little
Yeah.
girl today or in
Yeah.
high school, I would be very upset.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, the
No,
girls,
of
the
course.
girls are starting to fight. You've got girls that are in high school
Yeah.
that are saying this
Filing
is,
lawsuits.
This is bullshit.
Yeah.
I know they didn't work their tail off to be the top in their sport, competing against their peers, only to have some loser guy
Yeah.
who couldn't even make the men's team step up and take the gold? No,
Right, right.
And losing,
Yeah,
and some of these young ladies losing opportunities for scholarships
Yeah.
in college,
What-
an education, the
Yeah.
only way they can get an education.
What
They're missing those opportunities because this.
So
things.
what happens if a guy is looking for an in to college and he can't make it, he can't get a college scholarship, an athletic scholarship, and he just switches
Well, that's
over
happening.
to female for the last
Well, like
2
you
years
said.
and just dominates
Yeah,
and gets a
but
scholarship?
that's been happening, especially in track and field sports. You know, you have these
That's insane.
boys, you know, who are claiming to be girls,
Yeah.
and they're competing for these scholarships, and
Which
they're
is gonna hurt
You know,
girls.
of
It's just
course,
gonna hurt women.
absolutely. Now, the scarier part is, you know, we're obviously, you know, this is the litmus test. I think sports is the litmus test for this issue.
Yeah,
But-
that's true,
But I
because
mean,
if- yeah,
but
that's
we're
a
seeing
good
it in the
point.
military.
That's a good
Right?
point.
Are we not?
Oh.
You know, we're seeing it in other aspects of our culture right now, where again they're trying to level this playing field. And look, I'm not saying that there probably aren't many places in the military, because there are hundreds of thousands of roles within the military, right? That there probably should be some parity. But you know, like we've been talking about, driving a tank, you know, or maybe it's, you know, in some other, you know, capacity, you know, where again the physical demands of those roles are not conducive to women.
Well, we don't have the time to go into this topic, but I will say this when it comes to the military, and I'd like to hear what EJ says too. If something doesn't make you more lethal, then right off the bat you should pause and take a really good look at it. If it doesn't automatically make the forces more lethal at fighting and winning wars for the country,
Yeah.
then you have to stop and say, okay, then we need to pause and not go 100 miles an hour down this direction. That's the only thing I'll say about that is, does it increase your lethality? Don't give me this stuff about, you know, diverse and all
Yeah.
that. The military is the most diverse organization on the planet, okay? It's more diverse than any college campus. It's more diverse than your public school system. It's the most diverse organization in the entire planet. I've never been in an organization since the military that was as diverse, and I
Right.
don't know that I ever will be.
Well, and don't get me wrong. Like, there's obviously, you know,
not a diversity
to a
issue.
certain extent, we're seeing a diminished role of physicality necessary in the military, right?
that's concerning.
Because of the evolution of drones.
Well,
you know, we're seeing now robotics. You know, we're
The U.S. military is going through a change right now, not to the best. I mean, certainly not when I was in or before, the folks that were in before I was. There is a softening of the military. The Army just passed a rule 6 months ago that if you're in the middle of a rucksack, or if you're in the middle of training and you want to take a nap because you want to take a break, you can.
I don't know about that. I don't.
Army times. It's the kind of
Are
thing
you talking
that
about in basic training or something, or what are we talking about?
Any
A
training.
ruck march? Like you
Any
just take it
training.
out? Like
You
I don't
just
get
stop.
how that works.
you just stop. I'll
Okay.
send it to
Okay.
you.
Send that to me.
So the Army and the Air Force as well. The standards have been lowered.
Right.
There's no question of that.
Yeah.
They have been. When in the military, when I was in the military.
But first of all, wait.
the things
Before
I
that,
did,
why do you think that is?
I think because the military is becoming a social experiment.
Okay.
I think that for the past 10, 20 years, it has become a political pawn that it was not before.
Right.
When I came in, the leadership was who they were, regardless of what party they belonged to, or their ideological views or social views. They were military people leading military men and women and making sure that we have the most lethal military in the world.
I never
We
knew
go
the
in, we
political
wouldn't come
views
back.
of anybody I served with.
Now there is
this day, I don't
clearly,
know.
I could tell you that I knew the flag officers and their political parties in the last 5 years of my time in the
Wow.
military, because it was known. And
Yeah.
an example of this, we're talking about the trans thing.
Yeah.
When I was in, it
Because
was
that's
very
now
clear.
happened. Now
It was
that's now
always
that's now
discussed.
come back.
The role of the women in the military has always been discussed.
Yeah.
Should they go into combat? Shouldn't they go into combat? Should they be in combat roles? Many of women were in supporting roles or ended up being POWs. They found themselves shooting and doing well. Some were not because they were women, but because they were not trained for that particular
Right.
role. So the question was always there, and consistently, the military community always said, "Do not lower the standards. You
Yeah.
want to bring women in the military to do combat roles? By all means.
Right.
Don't lower the standards. Keep the standards as they are. If they meet the standards, absolutely let them in the process. The problem is that those standards, nobody has listened to that, and what they have done is they have shifted. The standards become lower.
Inevitably, the
lower,
standards
lower.
get lowered in order to allow
encourage
the
larger
social
pool.
change to
Yeah.
occur. So the latest example of that is the Army went to a gender-neutral physical fitness test. Okay, and it was a test that was it had like 3 brackets, and they were more difficult depending on your job specialty, which I think to a lot of people in the military made a lot of sense. If you were infantry, armor, artillery, and maybe some others, you had to meet the highest standard, and then there was a second tier and a third tier, and I think that made a lot of sense to a lot of people, right? But it was gender neutral though. So it didn't matter whether you were a female or a male in the infantry or a female and a male in a support role, you had to meet the same standard. Okay, so they had got this thing fully implemented because this takes a long time to train up the trainers and get implemented.
Right.
They got it implemented, and when it was beginning to be fully implemented, they realized that 60% of women were failing and 10% of males were failing. Now, I don't know what percentage of males normally fail the PT test. Some of it, I don't know that would be abnormal for 10% to fail, but 60% failure rate amongst females I know is super high compared to the old test, which was gender-based.
Right.
So the old test, as a quick example, was the old test in the 17 to 21 age bracket. If you were a male, you had to get at least 42 push-ups just to pass. Anything less than 42 push-ups in 2 minutes and you failed. If you're a female and you did 42 push-ups, you maxed out at 100%.
Right.
So there was a clear difference when it was male-female based physical fitness test.
The numbers are even higher.
They went to a gender neutral, and so many women have failed that they've now abandoned this. So so now they're literally so what's great about this though is the science is glaring. It's glaring
Right.
in the face of all the bureaucrats and the party of science people. They're faced with the fact that, oh, wait a minute, I guess people aren't all the same after all, because they have so many females failing, they've now abandoned the test.
84% of women failed the Army Combat Fitness
Wow,
Test,
so it's even higher,
compared to with
84%.
30% of men failing the test.
Wow. All right. Well, again, that's a much deeper topic than we can certainly continue to get into today. But on that note, we're going to start to bring this in for a close.
Burning one.
We're going to go ahead and do one more quick trip down the table. We'll start over on the opposite end as far as
We can talk about that. He
the
showed
stories.
me the nap time policy. EJ showed me the nap time policy, but we'll talk about that.
I think this show needs a nap time policy.
Hey.
Hey, we're going to start with Anibal on the show, on the stories that we did not get to talk about tonight. And even though Anibal had quite a lengthy...
No, I didn't.
40, 50 stories.
What's the one story you didn't get to on your attic, sir?
I love international politics. I'm excited to see that the U.S. has sent pretty high-level U.S. diplomats to Taiwan just to piss off the Chinese. I'm very excited to see that, and I'm excited to see how that's going to continue to develop the relationship, because I don't think the Chinese will invade. I think that is just poking the bear further than they need to, and I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even make it to land the first wave. I think they eventually make it to land at Taiwan. I don't even think they'll make it until like the second or third wave.
Hey, that China sees a bear even for the Chinese.
It's rough. And so the same
through it.
example is how the French tried to cross to Britain, and how that's always become a constant problem because of the weather. It's even worse in the Taiwanese Strait.
Huh. Wow.
So it's very difficult to invade, and there's only 12 beaches in Taiwan that Chinese could actually land amphibious.
There's
Damn.
12 beaches.
There's
12 beaches. Well, we only needed 3 in France, right? We only needed 3 in France,
Yeah, but
right?
in France, there's actually 162 places that you could actually landed with the size of the U.S. And moving on for D-Day, I think it was, they actually, and you guys already know this, that they changed the location like 2 or 3 times. So, but the number of beaches, it was fascinating to read that.
Those beaches.
Son of a beaches.
EJ Otero, thank you again so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, my Colonel, go ahead and let us know what stories
My
are you watching? What are you keeping a pulse on right now?
I'm keeping an eye on Russia.
Okay.
What's going on in the Ukraine? I'm keeping an eye on Russia's influence in Syria, and I'm keeping an eye on the Chinese and India. That's what I'm keeping an eye on for now. And of course, I always keep an eye year-round, 365 days a year, anything in Latin America.
Right.
But on an intellectual note, that I'm delving more recently is on those.
Well, and you continue to do a lot of philanthropical work through your foundation.
Yes.
And if people are interested in looking into that, you know, because I know you've been sending supplies even still to Venezuela. And
Yeah, we send 2.5 million meals to Venezuela and some of the refugees in Colombia.
Yep.
So
What's the name? Can you drop
Course
that?
of Action
Yep.
Foundation.
Course of Action. Yeah.
Okay.
Course of Action Foundation, right here out of Tampa. Look it up, COA Foundation or courseofactionfoundation.com. And we have done that. We have provided aid to the victims of the hurricanes in the Bahamas, in Puerto Rico.
Right.
We send close to 3 million pounds of aid to Puerto Rico. We have given wheelchairs to veterans here, track wheelchairs, about 25 of those.
The track chairs. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Those things are like 10 grand a piece or something, aren't
They are. They are. And we make it happen somehow. And we got involved with the homeless here in Tampa, feeding them on weekends. And up north and in Texas, we send about 1 million bottles of water to help out. First, the hurricanes a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, in the Panhandle, and recently in Texas.
Oh, okay. When they
So
had
we're doing a lot of things. Plus, on top of that, we have donated $25,000, $30,000 for scholarships to kids that want to go to school, merit-based. Not
Okay.
just any kid, but merit-based.
Right.
They just have a difficult time, but they have the grades, so we help them out. We do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Wow. It's amazing. So thank you again for being on the show.
I don't
I'll
know
make
how
sure
I wanna
that
follow that, man.
I'll make sure to. We'll make sure to have you on back again very soon.
I helped an old lady cross the street yesterday.
You help a lot of old people every day, Joe.
That's right, we do.
They're home helpers.
That's what we
Very
do.
true.
That's what we do. Let's see. I still the Jeremy DeWitt Metro State thing calmed down. So I haven't seen any more videos on there. I'm telling you, man, you gotta check that guy out. He's hilarious. He's gonna end up with a Netflix thing. I think they're gonna follow him. No, you know, honestly, I'm off the top of my head. I got nothing. I don't know if there's anything in particular.
All right.
What's
For
coming?
me?
What's coming up this week? I mean,
Well, it's a lot of these trials, and of course we've got these police things
that's,
happening.
Oh, that's right.
All the
that's
police
right.
shootings
well,
and
did
the
watch,
mass shootings.
Yeah, I said
and
I'm not tracking it. I guess I am tracking it. So the closing arguments for the Chauvin trial were today.
Right.
The prosecution and defense, and I saw some of that. But then I watched some of the news, and of course they were downplaying. They basically said that the defense went too long, and that turns off jurors. And that there's a juror that has diabetes, and that could be a problem. That just goes to show.
gosh.
That just goes to show the stupidity
There's
of the
nothing
media.
else to talk about.
Yeah.
That just goes to show the stupidity of the media. They were literally saying that the defense was making a mistake because they were going too long, and there's a juror with diabetes, and that's going to turn them off to you. And I'm like, really? You think someone's going to prison for the rest of their life because of that? Like, so anyway.
Because the juror has diabetes.
So I think they rested their case today. So the jury's going to be going to deliberation here. So that will probably next week's show. I mean, we're in a couple of days. This is happening.
So then answer this
This is
question.
happening in a
Does
couple days.
Minnesota burn or not?
It burns regardless.
No,
It
yeah.
burns, it burns
No,
regardless.
I agree.
No, I think I
Yeah.
said this 2 weeks ago. If he's convicted of the highest charge, which I think was second-degree murder, it's second-degree, third-degree, and manslaughter, or whatever. So I think if he's convicted of the highest charge of second-degree murder, it burns in jubilation.
Yeah.
And if he's not convicted of that,
It
or
burns in
acquitted
effigy.
at all, then it just burns because hey.
Well, and I agree with Kimberly, who's saying that they should be censuring Maxine Waters after her
Yeah.
call for
Flat out,
confrontation.
we need to be in the streets more. And she said we need to be in the streets and we need to get more confrontational.
Right,
That's
yeah.
what a United States congressman said, and no one cares.
And then
won't
didn't
do
I
anything.
think there was a drive-by shooting on some National Guardsmen.
And they shot a Humvee. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Because it's not up armored. When I saw that article,
Yeah.
so I saw the gunshot on the Humvee, and it's just a regular Humvee, which is like your car getting shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And so
I've seen it.
And-
Early Iraq.
Yeah,
Right.
So basically, these are the
Just
these
nice,
are-
nice camo
these
spray
are the-
paint.
yeah, these are the soft skin Humvees. You might as well take the doors off. It's more comfortable. So
We did.
we did. Yeah. So
That was the
so-
AC system.
yeah, that's all you
Yeah,
got. So we're about to end up with up armored Humvees on the streets of America, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
I think is disgusting.
Well, because again, the minute the military fires back, now you got an even bigger problem.
Military presence, the way it is in Washington D.C. today,
Oh, it's-
it
yeah.
is disgusting. Is beneath our country,
Yeah.
and it is an embarrassment.
But we're putting these young people in this position because a National Guardman's going to get killed because they're out there with rifles and no magazines in them.
Right.
They're out there with weapons with no ammunition. And what are you doing? Why are we getting these soldiers involved?
It's just theatrics.
They look cool.
It looks, it's like right after 9/11, there was all these
Yeah, it's-
military people around. It's like, well, but what are you doing?
Yeah. Right.
Standing there looking tough?
Which
You're a
is what they do
19-year-old
in
kid.
most Latin
Yeah.
American countries.
Yeah,
I mean, it's common in it.
Yeah.
Sorry to break it to
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
but
brown
where we
people-
come from,
We got it.
Brown
Yeah, where we
people-
come from.
Brown people enjoy a good military display every once in
Yeah.
a while.
a good a good military presence.
yeah,
We're setting these young people up for trouble because you've got National Guardsmen. They're going to get hurt.
right.
And what are they going to do? Shoot back? And now we got the National Guard fighting our civilian population. This is just.
Yeah.
Well, remember, citizens,
Well-
in Florida, we just passed the Anti-Riot bill.
That's
so
right.
if you want to move to Florida and feel much more comfortable, please come our way.
Well, and one more reason to give people to move to Florida. The story I'm watching this week is actually the powers that have been given to the police, especially in Ontario, Canada,
Yeah.
and what is made likely spread throughout the rest of Canada. But basically, it's the third national lockdown that they are now elevating to a national emergency status, so much so that they are giving elevated powers to the police departments, basically to apprehend and incarcerate
were okay.
anyone.
I thought they
It's
didn't have
oh
no
yeah, no, there's nothing happens.
Are we
in
going
Canada.
to see a Canadian
And-
get upset because of this?
You know, and
A Canadian?
well, and and again, so there's a buddy of mine who lives in Canada, and it's fascinating to see the difference in the mindset, right? Because for them, it's like, oh well, it's for the greater good.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
They're
and
all about big
it's
government.
fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we'll be okay. We'll
Yeah.
deal with this because
Yeah.
it's for the greater good.
Nope.
You know. Meanwhile, again, it's like, okay, well, how long are you willing to tolerate this? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 3 months? Is it another year?
When is
right?
someone
Like
when is someone going to acknowledge there's no point in locking down?
Right.
When everyone gets the shot.
There's no point.
Then what's the point? What's the point?
Right, but then at
when
that
everyone gets the
point,
shot?
now does Canada mandate vaccines, right? Whereas again, there's been people here that have been tried to explore that idea, right? And
It's
it
coming.
would never.
I don't think
you
it's
know,
going to happen. I don't think
But
it's
you're basically
yeah.
between vaccine passports
You're
now
gonna
to
need
travel to
two
Hawaii.
shots.
To travel to Hawaii, you need a vaccine
Well,
passport.
Hawaii is another country.
You know,
So-
but again, what's the stop? Again, you're basically putting people into a position where now they have to get it because it just makes life
I
easier to
understand
go
your
ahead and
position
do
that you're
it.
talking about, but especially in Hawaii, you've already had a 14-day quarantine for anyone coming into the state. So it's already been a thing, and it's already a very progressive state. So I'm not surprised that happened, but you won't see. Again, what other states do in their states, I don't really care about because I live in Florida, I work in Florida, I travel in Florida. If I'm going to travel to France and they need me to show that I've had a vaccine, I get it. I'm going to their country for their laws.
Right.
But I'm here in Tampa, in Florida, Hillsborough County. Don't you dare tell me I got to get a shot when
Kimberly's
I don't want to get a shot.
Kimberly's saying that. Well, the next restriction will just be, oh, you'll have to have a booster requirement.
Well, what was the
oh,
one?
You had your booster?
Where was the one? I was saying the other day that I think Pfizer is saying that a third shot is going to be necessary, and that it is in all likelihood, in all likelihood, there is the expectation that now the shot will become an annual necessity.
Well, we've always talked about this, that this is going to be the new flu shot. Yeah. And this is our generation's flu shot that we're going to get every single year if you need one. But again, even last year, if you didn't want a flu shot, you didn't have to get a flu shot. It made to the point to where I know medical doctors and nurses that haven't got a flu shot in years because they just don't want one, and they were still able to operate inside the hospitals.
Well, and then regardless of the shot or whether you've had COVID, now the whole talk is, oh, it doesn't matter if you've even had the shot or had COVID, you can still get it. It's like, well, then screw it then. Like, well, then what are we doing?
No, look, I mean,
if you can get reinfected, then at what point in time do you throw your hands up and say, well, then forget it then.
Not to put my personal, family business out there, but literally right before the show, I found out that an aunt of mine, within the last week, got the vaccine shot, became ill because of the vaccine shot. Now she's sitting in a hospital in South Florida with pneumonia. And so she would have literally been better off not having had the vaccine.
Yeah, but that could be unrelated too.
There's a lot of speculation.
It's still the same point.
Yeah, right.
It could be coincidental.
How do we know?
It could be
right.
coincidental.
We don't know.
You don't know, but it could be coincidental.
But we still don't know.
Otherwise, up until that point, she's been completely healthy. All of a sudden, she gets the shot. She starts to feel sick because of this. Now has tested positive. They said, yeah, she has COVID. Well, yeah, because she got the shot. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so now she's been diagnosed with pneumonia.
So when do we send Fauci to the guillotine? That's all I want to know.
Oh.
For lying to the U.S. American
Look,
population.
Jim Jordan, call it posturing, call it political theater, but he laid into him pretty hard. And look, I think right now I hope he's enjoying his fame and his fortune. Being literally the highest paid.
Trump should have fired that guy.
Yeah, being the highest paid member of government in the country.
You fire him, he becomes an icon. It'll become even worse. Allow.
That's
Fauci,
what I'm saying. I think eventually
allow Fauci to trip
because
on
the
himself,
only thing
that's
that
what's happening now.
the only thing this
pissed.
country loves to do more than build somebody up is to tear them down.
Yeah.
And I think that time may come for Fauci.
Well, we've got to stop. We got to stop looking to this guy for all the answers. He doesn't have all the answers.
Right? No.
He doesn't know.
He ain't Jesus.
But these people's, the fact that they are smart, accomplished people, they just can't bring themselves to say, I'm not sure.
Right.
They just can't bring themselves. They always have to know and have an answer. And then when you go against them, oh, you're anti-science.
Just another white guy telling people what to do.
Exactly.
All right, on that note, thank you so much to everybody for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Don't forget to grab the video version of our show on YouTube, Facebook, and the audio version of our podcasts over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. On behalf of Joe Wicker, Colonel E.J. Otero, and Anibal David Cabrera, I'm Jonathan Torres. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time. So long, everybody.